like a trying year in a way that we have not seen trying years in our lifetime. And, starting with the pandemic at the beginning depending on where you were, but like end of February, early March, and then everything that took place over the summer after the death of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and Elijah McClain, learning about all of those deaths and then just seeing our nation, and not even just the nation, but seeing the world go into an uprising. Because at a certain point we have to realize that Black lives do matter and that they haven't been mattering, that people need to change things, right? That like a lot of stuff needs to change. So from that to what came next, y'all. After that, it was so much happened in 2020. I was telling a friend the other day that like we were watching, I believe it was January or February, was when the Aaron Hernandez story came out on Netflix. And I remember thinking that was like the craziest thing I had ever seen. And I will never watch another story like that again, just by the way, because it really messed with my head. I was like, I don't need to watch this stuff anymore. But so I was just talking to that friend, and I was like, girl, we were watching that story in the beginning of the year, and at that time we were like, this is the craziest shit I ever heard. This is the craziest story I ever. And then boom, pandemic, and then boom, everything else that's happened. Then we had the election and the circus that, the whole Trump presidency has been a circus. Like, it's been a circus from the moment he decided to throw his name in the ring. And someone who is typically an avid watcher of politics and follower of politics, I just had to pull out. Like, I had to pull out of that. Even before he was elected in 2016, we went through the whole circus rigmarole of that for 4 years. And then to come to the election season that we had, thankfully, on that front, we will be welcoming in a new president who brings in the first Black female vice president. Black, female, South Asian. What are all the other things? HBCU graduate, hello. AKA, hello. What are all the other things? Kamala had a whole list of, it's like there was no way. There was no way that they weren't going to be elected in, right? Like, with the list of people that she touches on her own, right? But so we have a new era coming into power here in just a matter of weeks, actually, right? Like, about a month before the inauguration takes place. And so it will be interesting to see what happens there, but also knowing that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. I'll just kind of leave it at that. So there's that, like, all of that happening, and then now that we are in the winter time and we've gotten past the election stuff, we're right back at this. We're into this, I don't know if it's a second surge or third surge of the coronavirus. And so everything is starting to look bleak again, in terms of those numbers. And so all of that to say, I didn't really need to recap the whole year for you, right? 2020 has been wild. It's been a lot for us. But in that, I've just been reflecting, over the last couple of weeks about how, um, while on a collective, right, like on a human collective scale, this has been a bad year, and that we've had so many people lost. At this point in the US, it's well over 200,000 people whose lives have been lost due to the pandemic. Um, we also, and then the other things that are on that. So whether or not people have lost their lives, people have lost jobs and are not able to find replacement for that. And so then people are not working, they're not making money, they're not able to pay rent, and we have all of the things that come with just the poor decisions that have been made on our behalf as a nation here. But with all of that, I know personally, myself personally, and I know so many other people personally who, while this has been collectively a really bad year, that personally, individually, they have been having really good years. And I believe that so much of that, I'll speak to my perspective because I don't know for other people and I don't want to speak for other people. I can only speak to what my experience has been. But for me, I believe the reason that this year has been such a good year, personally, is because we were forced to sit, and we were forced to be in a space where we had to be especially intentional. I know for myself that's what it was. Had to be especially intentional about what comes next. And if I can back up for a little bit, I would like to share with you just kind of the space that I was in around this time last year, and you'll understand even more why I say, like, for as bad as this year has been, it has been quite sweet. So if you've been following my journey, you know that in 2018, I started working as a doula part-time while I was teaching full-time at a high school. And then in June of 2019, I took the leap of faith and decided I could get out there and do this work full-time. I was meeting my goal when I was working part-time as a doula. I needed to get 2 clients a month, and I was like turning people away a lot. So I assumed that that meant that I would just keep getting clients, right? So I did all the things that I needed to do. Like, I put all my little safety nets in place, and I had all these plans. And what do they say? You want to humor God, then you tell him about your plans. So I had all these plans, and I had all these plans to make sure that we would be good and everything would go. And it seems that just as soon as I quit that job, all my little plans started falling to pieces. And so last year around October, I had a really good birthday. And then we had homecoming. 2019 October was lit at the beginning. It was my birthday, and then homecoming weekend. I think they were in the same weekend, or like back-to-back weekends or something. There was just a lot of good stuff going on. Den Black Mamas was here in town. They hosted a couple of events, and so there was just a lot of really good stuff going on. And then that's when all these little plans that I had started to fall through. I wasn't getting the client calls that I had been getting when I had a nice little cushy, safe job. And so things fell apart very quickly. Fell apart, at least in the way that I thought it would work. And so it forced me into a space of, it was really hard. That's what I can say. It was just a really hard space. I was also dealing with quite a few personal issues, relationship issues, like friendships and family relationship issues. I don't be having relationship issues with men, but we'll talk about that another day. so, and so there's just a lot. There was a lot. And I was at a point last December where I told myself that if it didn't turn around quick enough, and I don't even know what quick enough was, but if it didn't turn around, that I was going to have to like hang this little dream up and go back to working for other people and make sure that we were straight. And then I could come back to this. But in that I was forced to sit, you know, I didn't have clients, that wasn't working. My other stuff wasn't working. And so I knew I wasn't going to go back to a building. That was for certain. I was like, I'm not going back to work in anyone's buildings right now. So I'm going to have to figure this out. And so, you know, I spent a lot of time crying. I spent a lot of time crying. And that was also around the time that I realized that rather than fretting and trying to hurry up and fill in this space and time with work to do, that if I gave my all, right? If I gave all of the energy and attention and intention to that space, as bad as it felt for me to be in it, because it felt horrible, as bad as it felt for me to be in that space, if I gave all of my focus, energy, and intention to that space and to creating what I said and what I set out to create, that if it worked, beautiful. I don't know that I believed it, y'all. I don't know that I believed it. I don't think I did. That if it worked, beautiful. And if it didn't, then I just had to then I was just going to have to get a job and come back to square one, right? So that's what I did. That's what I did. I just I put my head down and created the work and really focused on what I wanted my doula practice to look like and focused on what type of clients I would bring in and, you know, how I was going to market that with the very little marketing, not only very little marketing skill that I had, but like the money to market with, right? So I was just finding all these creative ways, but because I allowed myself to sit down and be in it and be in that hard time. One of the other things that came up at that time was I needed to bring in money because I was not bringing in money. I needed to bring in money, but I didn't want to have to clock in and clock out, because once I clocked in and clocked out, that meant that my dream was going, like the time spent on creating my life would now be taken over again by someone else and their time. And so I started doing grocery deliveries. I started delivering groceries for Shipt. And I was just like, so this is what my days look like. I woke up, I was like, oh, this is horrible. Why would I do this? This is crazy. You are so silly. You're a nurse and a teacher and you're like scrambling for change. That's dumb. And then I would go pick up some grocery deliveries and pick up whatever I can and bring in whatever money I could to cover my expenses. And I always just barely covered my expenses. I told myself that any month that I missed rent was the month that I would go back to work. And I always made it, like by a dime made it. I'm not even lying to you. And then, so I would do my Shipt grocery deliveries. And then when I would come back in from doing the Shipt grocery deliveries, I would just sit up at night and strategize and plan and like work on my website some more and work on my work on whatever the things that I needed to do. And a lot of that work also is the work that I had to do